Hey guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video I'll be doing a comparison video, or player comparison again video on Nat Fyfe and James Jordon. Going through, these two are very similar price, one being $491 in Nat Fyfe and the other James Jordon being $454k. So there is a 37k gap there, which is roughly 4 points. But they both, if you actually think about it in more depth, they both serve a very similar purpose for a lot of our sides, is that they present value, and Fyfe is historical value, and James Jordon is a role change and somewhat of a historical value without when he is not the sub, which as a Sydney fan I don't expect him to be the sub. But that sort of, they're going to be those type of guys that we sort of want for those 6-7 weeks, similar to a similar mold to Elliot Yeo, but I think Elliot Yeo has the potential to go even further down the season as long as his injuries hold. But that is sort of the similar mold with, as I said, with James Jordon and Nat Fyfe, is that we want them for 6 or 7 weeks, go 25 above their average or so, gain that quick 200 or so K, and then jump out of them as they both get towards that sort of 600, 650k or so. And it's sort of, I could see either way with each, with individuals going or players going, either of them, as it will obviously depend on round 0, given James Jordon is playing in round 0 for the Swans. But it will be very dependent on which one you go, as I could see them both going 75 or 80. But before we get into this video, remember to like and subscribe, turn the notification bell on so you know when I upload, and let's get into the video. So as you can see here, if you're following me on Twitter, you would have seen that I had my squad sort of rejigged again. I just sort of went over with a clean slate and went, which guys am I wanting to definitely start and which guys am I sort of tedious about. And I mean, I can sort of get rid of Jai Clark at the moment, and I guess to a certain extent Marty Hoare a little bit, and I guess Darcy Wilson because I don't know too much about it. And this is sort of what I've come out to be with, and it basically means that I have about roughly 3 premiums left. 3 or 4, is it 4 premiums? Probably going to be three premiums, I would think, because there's going to be probably 2 or so premiums along in these spots here, and then a premium here and a rookie here. So there's 3 premiums left to sort of fill, and that depends on round 0. But anyway, let's get into the player comparisons, and you will see James Jordon is lined up currently at my F3, and that is based solely because I think he's going to be the better option than Nat Fyfe. Nat Fyfe, we've seen him before go 105, 102. Well, you can see here 102, 105 in 2018, 2019, and even before that. You see 2014 to 2019, he was an absolute bull. Even in 2020 in the COVID year, when he had 60% CBAs, he went at 75. Now, if you do the adjustable sort of for Nat Fyfe, you'll see that he is adjusted at a 55.6, but if you actually look at his value, he's at 491, which if we actually look at just his break even, that'll be able to tell us for you guys. He is priced at 54, so he's sort of priced a little bit below what seems to be this 56 season, I would suspect. This 56.1, probably a 0.3% discount on that for the 9 games played last year. He sounds like he's in pretty good shape, and that's the thing with it, is that he could easily go on a 7-game span of just averaging 80 or so. And that is very possible. The only problem I have with that is the news that he is going to be managed, it sounds like, to get through. Obviously, has only played 31 games in the last 3 seasons, and you can even take that back to before even just 2020. I know that it was a shortened season, 14 games, 2019 only and 20 games, 2018 15. He never really has gotten on the park consistently. He's had basically 1 season on the park and then 1 season off the park for the last sort of 7-8 years, almost all the way back to 2013 to 2015, where he was an absolute rock. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how he pulls up, I guess. But for me, I could see myself going with a Nat Fyfe in that sort of probably F3, I would say at this point, as I feel like I am going to go with two 600k guys, but I feel like Nat Fyfe could be that guy that definitely could slot in at F3, just because even though he is going to be rested a little bit and stuff like that, if James Jordon puts a shocker up in the practice games and also round 0 and just starts off with a bad, almost no gain out of playing round 0 for price rises, then I may just go with a Nat Fyfe there and just say less worry about him needing to get through games, as it would have been Jordon, and it would have been potentially with Jordon and Macrae just combining up to a guy in their bye round. So that is something that I'm thinking about. So Fyfe wouldn't be too much. He could be an upgrade target then in around about the round 5 bye that Grundy, Macrae, James Jordon, Taylor Adams, etc. all have, and Nick Dacos obviously. So trying to minimise that bye could be crucial, and Nat Fyfe might be the way to do that. But it looks like Nat Fyfe will probably be sitting, I would assume, probably 70 to 75% time on ground, and then also around that 40 to 45% CBAs, I would expect is what Nat Fyfe is going to do. And if he does that, I'd expect sort of that 70 or so sort of output from him, 70 to 75, even with the managed time on ground. I think that's what he can do, and I think he could easily pop off and put out a 110 or a 115 in one game, and it just helps his scoring potential. Well, his not scoring potential, obviously, but his price rises if he does that. So that's why I think Nat Fyfe is an interesting one to look at. But the guy that I think will be the most influential is actually James Jordon. And you're probably thinking, why do you think that exactly? And it is just solely based on this, the amount of vests that he has had. He had a horrid time in that finals game that he played. But look at this VFL form: 149, 158, 105, 96, and then also a 122. So this year he's gone 126 in the VFL. I mean, in 2023 he went 126. And then in 2022 we played the one game for a 123, and then he's played no other VFL, but that just shows that he plays really well in VFL, and I don't think he would have come to Sydney just to play in the VFL, to be honest with you, as he probably would have rather play almost in the best and break his way into the Melbourne side than to just come to Sydney to play in the VFL. I think he's come to Sydney basically knowing that he's going to take out McInerney's spot. And if you look at this, if you look at when he was actually playing consistent time on ground above like even 65% time on ground here, if we look at all his above 65% time on ground games in 2023, he averaged 67, which I believe, if we go to James Jordon, is plus 17 in itself. And he did have a couple of shockers at this half forward role against Adelaide and Richmond. I expect him to play more of a even more inside role than we've seen with McInerney. And McInerney, I think, averaged 75, I want to say. If we go over here to midfielders and we just go McInerney, he averaged last year 71. So I think James Jordon could easily do 71, and with that increase in midfield time, most likely around that 15 to 20% CBA role, I expect him to get, and yes, he has had some CBAs in this, I expect him to get around about that 75 or so, even if not 80 role. As I think that is the sort of position that we're looking at for James Jordon. I think he's a lot more useful in Sydney's system than he is for Melbourne's system, as Melbourne seem to like to use their midfielders a lot more than their sort of wingers, whereas Sydney, they run a lot obviously through Gordon, who was on the in the inside a lot, but they have Gordon, Chad Warner, who are some of their bigger ball winners, and then they've got, obviously off the halfback, they've got Lloyd, Florent and stuff like that, as well as McInerney getting a fair few touches on the other wing. So I think that James Jordon can be one of the predominant wingers you'll see. Jordon, I think Campbell will get the spot alongside Gordon as the three wingers that the Swans employ, and they will get a lot of touches just because they're really good by foot, all three of them. So I think he's been brought across to Sydney to be one that's very, very good with his disposal efficiency. You look at this, and when he plays a full game, his efficiency is generally in the 70s. I mean, he had a shocker in this game with a 33, but that was a sub game. So yeah, just looking at him and just looking at his disposal efficiency, he's been brought across for a reason, and I think he plays on that other wing aside from Goulden in the first couple rounds, and that's where you're going to really get the cash generation out of him. As priced at 50, if he goes 75 plus in the practice, well, not in the practice game, in round 0, sorry, he will break that break even in not in half. It will probably go down to about a 35 break even, and that's when you can just start going 75, 70, 70, 70, and then you just start making 30k a week almost, and then it's that break even gets to like 0, or even if not, if he gets lucky, could go into the negatives. And if that does happen, he's just going to start going 50, 60k per week up, and I could see him easily gaining, given that he has 5 games before the bye, I could see him easily gaining 130 or so k, 140k in that time, very, very easily. If not, if he goes on a good run and averages 90, he could gain, I would think, maybe even close to 200k and get towards that 650. But if he's averaging 90, you may just want to keep him almost at that point. And that may mean that you have to move on like a rookie guy like McRae to cover off not leaking too many points if you were to follow a similar structure to me. Or you put someone like a James Jordon potentially, if you can do, you have an extra forward or whatever somewhere, and you go with that. Or you may even have to trade in just hope, or trade in an extra forward or something, or just take a 40 score as that James Jordon covering score and hope that's not the score that's put on field and it's a 60 or 70 across the board. But yes, that is sort of the rundown of what I expect, and I'm just going to go through the CBAs. Yes, this wasn't the most in-depth video, as it has been sort of a busier week for me, so I haven't been and I didn't know necessarily which player comparisons to do, as I didn't want to interrupt some other guys doing them, and also it seems like a very point at where we're just waiting another sort of 3 or 4 days for all the match sims to go underway. Then we get to the actual practice matches coming in the next sort of 3 sort of week or so, and then we get into the sort of round 0. So this is probably the last week with not much content, but just going through the Swans CBA list, and yes, we have the likes of Mills out, Adams in, Jordan in. Ruckman don't really matter because obviously they're just different. But you'll see Parker, Rowbottom, Warner, Mills is out, as I said, Gordon, and then Papley, and then Sheldrick won't matter, as I don't think he'll make the side to start. With more injuries, he probably makes it in. And then you got guys down here that just took the odd one. So I'm expecting Parker again to be probably not, I wouldn't say 75%, I'd say more 65%. I don't think he will have these big 90% of games that he has generally. And I think you can sort of see a little bit of a role change here happening with a 58, 52 and a 29. So when possible, I think he has gone into the, when all available, in Mills, Goulden, even Papley was, and then you had Warner and Rowbottom. I think you've seen Rowbottom and also Parker have a role change here where they generally don't have as much CBAs, and you saw more Mills and Goulden, it looks like. So I'm wondering if this will flip again, and you'll see more of the, even when Mills is back, more of a Rowbottom split for Mills and a Mills split for row bottom, in that Mills stays more behind the ball, and this does Roberts' chances. But I'm just wondering, I think Parker's going to be around that 65%, row bottom around that 60%, Adams around that 60 as well, and then Warner and Gordon around that 50, and that leaves not much wiggle room for Mills and also the likes of James Jordon and also Tom Papley. So I'm just wondering if James Jordon does get how much James Jordon actually gets initially, and it'll just be an interesting sort of how they figure that out, as one of these midfielders will have a decreased time. I don't think it'll be row bottom, as he's not as useful, and I don't think it will be. I think it could be between Gordon and Parker that sort of give way a little bit. So I'm not expecting James Jordon to come out there and have 40% CBAs, as I don't think that is realistic for the Swans. Else we would see a major drop off from Parker to like 40% CBAs, and he hasn't had that. So I don't think that's the role that James Jordon is going to get. Yes, I did get a little bit sidetracked in this video, but just going through here, you can see Parker for the last 3 or 4 years, even though we've been seeing him pop up for the occasional goal and stuff like that, I don't think he will play that that forward role too much this year. Maybe next year that he does that. But yeah, I don't expect him to do that this year. So I am expecting James Jordon to only have that 20% CBAs. Whereas if we flick over to the Freo side of things, I definitely think it's an interesting dilemma with the with Nat Fyfe. If we go here and you look at this, Hayden Young and how they split it, it was very, very high numbers across the board for just their main three, and then Matt Johnson took a little bit as well as Switkowski and Tracy. Pretty sure it says Switkowski might actually, well, Tracy was the backup ruck anyway, but Switkowski might be injured in himself, and quite possibly could get injured again, or if he isn't injured, he can get injured, just because that seems to be the way that Freo fans talk about him. But yes, Nat Fyfe, I expect to be around this 40 to 50% CBAs. I don't think I said 60, as I think that would be a very, very full-time mid-roll, and we've seen Hayden Young do what I expect him to do, 70%. Brayshaw and Sarong around that 80%. That really only leaves a good sort of 70% for Fyfe and Johnson, it looks like, and I think that'll be the way that they go around it. As you can sort of see, it seems like they've been using Switkowski at the end as that fifth midfielder, alongside Johnson as the fourth midfielder for Switkowski and fifth for Johnson. I think you will see Nat Fyfe and Johnson be the fourth and fifth midfielders, but I think more of the split will go to Fyfe than it will to Johnson, as there'll be around 70% left for both of them, and I expect sort of a 40-45% for Fyfe. And also you could actually see as we look here, even in the first game you saw a little bit of Luke Jackson being a midfielder. You could see that again. As we see it sometimes, occasionally, it seems like around 10% a game of that, of Luke Jackson doing that. So he may steal 10% there, leaving 60% for Fyfe and Johnson, 40% for Fyfe and 20% for Johnson. So that basically rounds it out. If I was to give a sort of who I'd want, I would say without round zero scores, it would be James Jordon. Well, at the moment, it'd be James Jordon. Once we know round zero scores, depending on James Jordon, if it's James Jordon around that 65 or so plus, I go with him. But if James Jordon puts in like a 50 or so, then I'd just go with Fyfe, as I think he is the better option, because even though he's got an injury risk, we're not asking for the whole season. We are asking for 6 weeks of him doing well. Similar that to Elliot Yeo, 6 weeks of them just doing well. They gain 200k. And they're much better, I guess, than a lot of the competition. In those sort of spots, and then we figure out who the best premium is, and then we just chuck a Wilson or something, or a Manor up, and Nat Fyfe up to that guy. Or maybe it might be a Flanders still. Maybe it's a Jack McRae. Maybe it's a McDonald, who some people may not have. I probably will have. Maybe it's actually going back to a Taylor Adams. who I may not have. We just don't know at the moment, but we will, I guess, see more with round 0, and this matchup does sort of depend on round 0. But anyway, that is the video, and I'll see you guys probably the next one will be, the next one will be on Thursday, which will probably be another player comparison. We'll see who it is. But anyway, that is the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.